So welcome to my presentation. Let me first tell you what I'm about to talk about. My intention is to create a new theory of capital. So far, you have two. That is the one of Mises and Hayek, and the extension, which is Garrison. So my intention is to create a third one, and this is the second paper that, from that trilogy, so to put it. The third one will be presented, luckily. There was a place to present it tomorrow. So let me start. The theory that I suggest differs significantly from what you have heard or read. So you should not expect to find analogies to the Hayekian triangle, for instance, or something similar. So I'll start directly with the structure. There is a shortage of time, so I'll jump directly to this point. What I have presented is a structure of the automotive production as it exists today. That is, we have all the normal stages, which is iron ore production, flotation and melting, steel part production, and automotive production. And I'll use this structure in order to describe the whole economy. So for that purpose, I have separated at the lowest stage the automotive production in cars, which actually signifies the consumption, and trucks, which is the production of fixed capital goods, actually. So the arrows that you see is basically the flow of money between the stages. What is specific about this structure is what each stage consists of. So as we know in an economy, each company consists of three types of capital, which work together in order to accomplish something. That is, a company, it has rent and labor, it has circular capital, and it has fixed capital. All these types of capital together, they work jointly in order to accomplish something. So in this way, each stage that you see here is actually all this capital together. That is, the fixed capital can be represented directly in sight. Note that I'll be speaking about a closed free market economy with a fixed monetary supply. So this will be the simplification under which I discuss. Fine. As I said, there is fixed capital here. What that means in practice is that I'm able to show the depreciation. Depreciation itself cannot be shown as a monetary stream because no money flows out. But I can account for it, because here each stage has a certain, is big enough to accommodate a certain capital. So the size of each stage is not directly related to the amount of money in the economy, because fixed capital has a monetary price, but this price is not included directly in the money in the economy. So what we have actually is accumulation of prices. Each stage represents the accumulation of all companies, the current market prices of all companies which deal with iron ore production. So what we can see here is how the whole production goes one after another. But what we can also see is the complementarity along the whole production chain. That is, iron ore production produces at the same time ore for both production processes, for the production of cars and trucks. And the same applies for the flotation melting stage and for the steel part production stage. For simplicity, I have separated this stage only at the lowest level, that is cars and trucks. You see the separation. But this separation runs up this graph. You cannot see it, but it is there. Fine. There are two feedback loops which are worth mentioning here. The first is the loop on the left. So this represents the demand for consumer goods. So this is basically whatever people require. The most important loop is the right feedback loop, which runs down there from trucks up to the iron ore production. And this is the way in which fixed capital goods flow back into the production economy. So, as I said, this is the most important loop because it accomplishes two things. First, these fixed capital goods which flow back into the respective stages, they can compensate for the depreciation. And second, if they are in excess, we can actually reach the state of growth because the economy itself will grow. This graph has a limitation, and in particular it is that we cannot show how capital moves in the vertical direction. We can easily show how the capital moves laterally within the iron ore production stage, for instance, or within the automotive production, but the movement in the vertical direction will have to be handled only just by speaking. So with the help of this graph, I intend to discuss 4 separate cases, all of them under a fixed monetary supply and free market economy. So that is stationary economy, a jump from a stationary economy to a progressing economy, from a stationary to a retrogressing economy, and the case of an economic crisis, which, however, is not caused by the credit expansion. The credit expansion process is something for the future. So let us start in turn. The first case is a stationary economy. So you can imagine that this is the stationary economy. What that means is that the depreciation itself is exactly compensated by the fixed capital goods which flow from up there, from trucks up. This is the basic case from which I'll start. What is interesting in this case is that we don't need net saving for this state to exist. Basically, once the economy has reached this state in which the depreciation is exactly, countered by the production of fixed capital goods, then we can stop net saving and the economy will just grow. So let us jump to a progressing economy from this stationary case. So in order for the economy to grow, what we need is actually investment. And investment in this case is simply not here. In order for that to happen, the economic agents must start saving. What does this mean? So they'll consume less. In practice, this border that we see between cars and trucks will move to the left. That is, less cars will be produced and more trucks will be produced. This means that all the borders that exist up the graph that are not seen will move also to the left. So in a way, if you draw a line through the whole structure, it will go to the left. That is, less resources will be targeted toward the production of consumer goods than will be targeted toward the production of fixed capital goods. But once these fixed capital goods become more than before, then what will happen is that we'll not only compensate depreciation, but overcompensate it. And in this case, the economy can simply grow. Again, once we have reached that state, that is, we produce more fixed capital goods than before, we can stop saving. That's net saving can become 0. But the economy will grow nevertheless. So this is something specific for the structure that I discuss. I have discussed it in another paper. I have no time to deal a lot with it today. But this is a mode which is not present in the other ways in which the economy is presented. So now we could jump to the next case in which we jump from a stationary to a retrogressing economy. For that to happen, we have to go under the depreciation. That is, we must produce not enough capital goods in order to counter the depreciation. And in order for that to happen, people must decide to consume capital. That is, they increase their consumption and they just do not restore the capital that is there. What in fact will happen is that this border that I showed at the last part will move to the right. And the respective borders of the graph will also move so. So more iron ore production, more iron ore will be used for the production of cars than before, and less for the production of trucks. So once this happens, the economy will start retrogressing. And what's interesting is that even if we stop at that point, so we do not consume more capital directly, it will just continue retrogressing. Fine. The final case that I wish to discuss is the case of an economic crisis. As I said, this is not the case of the credit expansion, but a simple economic crisis which could be due to a natural disaster of some point, of some kind, for instance, it could be an earthquake or a famine or some sorts. And the interesting thing is how our system will just react to it. So suppose something happens to the steel part production, so that many plants are being just cannot function. there is an earthquake, and for some strange reason, just at this part, many plants are being just destroyed. What will happen in this case? First, the whole economy will go into a crisis mode. Why? Here, every economy is actually a sequence of processes. And if in a process something doesn't, at a certain point of the process, something doesn't function, then this affects the whole process, and by extension, the whole economy. So if at the steel parts production, we have a problem, then what will happen is that no steel parts will be produced. But then the automotive production cannot function also. So is the flotation and melting in iron ore. Nobody can use their products. So all this line of production will either stop or just the flow will decrease significantly. But what will happen? Since the steel parts will be in short supply, then their prices will jump. So the capital that has been released from all the other parts of the economy, which cannot function one way or another, will just flow towards the steel part production in order to restore it. Still, another process will kick in, and it is the saving from the economic agents. So in case of a crisis, there is it's a normal state that people start saving. They feel unsure about their future. And this, I believe, is actually the right way to do, the right thing to do, because what they want to do is fix the economy. In effect, what will happen is that this saving on the part of the people will just start restructuring the economy. That is, more trucks will be produced or more fixed capital goods will be produced than before. And this will help fix the steel part production. So in effect, this saving is quite beneficial for the restoration of the economy. And that is, nowadays, this saving is considered quite bad, but it is just because of our fractional resource system. And the only thing that it shows is that the fractional resource system is not fit or is not suited to the current economy. So let me conclude. I have created a system or a graph in which all types of capital are there. Just to note that in the Hayekian triangle, there is no fixed capital. You just subsume it somehow. First, the consumer production and durable capital production, they are complementary and they run next to each other. So with this graph, I can explicitly handle depreciation and also general losses if I wish. This structure works in a situation in which there is no net saving, which is something specific. And with the help of this structure, I can describe stationary, growing, retrogressing economy, and even the case of a natural disaster, or a general economic problem. But all this, as I said, is under a fixed monetary supply in a free market economy. The case of monetary cycle is a problem with a future paper of mine. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions? Oh, I can see one.
Thank you for your speech. This is quite an interesting one. I have a first question is, do I understand you correctly? You're stating that we can have a economic growth just by moving resources between the stages of production, right? Like we don't have to divert resources from the consumption. We can just move resources inside the production, between the production sectors, right?
No, I'm sorry, no, this was not meant. What I meant is that you can move the resources between, in the economy. That is, this bar that you see between cars and trucks, I can move it left and right. So I can produce more capital goods or consumer goods. This is the complementarity. What I mean is that once we produce fixed capital goods, this is enough. To counter the depreciation, this is enough. So we need to move the economy in such a state that we produce enough fixed capital goods, and then we are done. The growth will continue without net saving. That's what I meant.
All right, I have a longer commentary, so maybe I'll share it with you during the break. But right now, I would say that I still see a problem within this model because because we have to somehow direct the new additional resources defined in the real terms, right? Still, if we want to produce new fixed capital, we want to build new machines, therefore we need additional resources in physical terms to move them for those new machines. So if we produce a surplus of physical material, some of it must be diverted to produce the machines. And therefore, it is still, in the real terms, I think this is our net savings in the real terms. So monetary...
There is no net saving in monetary terms here. That's what I mean. But there is net investment.
Maybe, well, if we look at the prices, it can be that there are no monetary savings. Maybe I have to think it through. But in real terms, like the real resources, I think there are still net savings. That's my main point.
I
Thank
don't know.
you.
It's, you have a view which does not coincide with mine. Sorry.
So are there any other questions? If not, that I will jump in with one.
Thank you.
No, but I would have one more question for you. So you said about moving left or right, but you said also that this split, it occurs at every level. So does it give any bound for the, for example, if you produce steel parts for car and steel parts for trucks, that definitely it bounds the limit in which you can switch between cars and trucks. So not all trucks are as useful as cars, and on the other hand, not all cars can be used for truck purposes. So that if you have some fixed proportion of the parts at the upper levels, you cannot move these. So you have definite bounds on the...
Yeah, I definitely have a bound. The economy just has that much productive potential. I cannot go over it. I can decide to produce just cars or just trucks, but I cannot produce more than is possible.
Okay, but and I agree also that with Przemek that there has to be some less, let's say, utility gained by consumers. That if there are less cars produced, that ultimately more trucks represent, in some sense, more real capital, if you can put it in that way.
I'm not sure exactly if I understand.
Okay.
Probably our ways of thinking are a little
Sure.
bit different.
So that's only what. But thank you for your talk.
Thank you.
We have one more question.
Ah, sorry. Sorry. I haven't noticed you.
Thank you. To what extent would this kind of model imply that there is no stock? What I mean by saying that is, okay, you're shifting between cars and trucks, and this shift is basically a linear movement between cars and trucks. I can replace a car by a truck and vice versa.
This is not exactly a linear movement because I move all the resources up there. So as I said, there is a complementarity, but this complementarity is not just only at the last stage, but up there.
Understood. Yes. Okay. Fine on that one. But nevertheless, I mean, it's maybe I'm just too pragmatic in that context. But moving from a car to a truck and vice versa needs a lot of adjustments in real terms, in real life.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
And
This is
to
the case of
buffer
a transitioning.
On that to buffer, there is no stock in your model. Stock meaning, okay, have some supplementary cars or some supplementary tools, machinery,
Exactly.
and that's all the way up to on this ladder, on
Yep,
this
exactly.
scaling.
You see that as a problem. Actually, the situation is like this. At the iron ore production that you see there, no adjustment whatsoever will be necessary because iron ore is entirely unspecific.
Yeah.
The lower you go, the more adjustment you have to do.
Yes,
So
I agree.
this is unavoidable.
The more things are commodities,
Yep.
the easier the adjustment goes.
Yep.
But obviously steel part is not as a commoditized product, but it's a more tailor-made product for trucks or for cars.
Correct. So
And that's where
it
you
needs an
need the
adjustment.
buffers.
And once you start saving, you're in transitioning mode.
Okay, all right, understood.
But you can stop saving and then you're in a stable, growing situation.
Okay, understood. Thank you.
Is that all?
Yeah, that's. Thank you very much.